What if I told you that the Fallout universe doesn't have any workers' safety laws? No OSHA, no workman's comp, no monthly safety meetings, no fall arrest systems, almost no fail-safes. You'd believe me, right?
Yes.
It's not exactly something the world building of Fallout tries to hide, and I know, no safety regulations, no OSHA. It kind of sounds like the universe that maybe one of your coworkers wishes he existed in. He tells you multiple times during lunch breaks how annoying all the safety meetings are and how health and safety just gets in the way of a day's hard work, and how fast he could run without steel-toe boots on. And as you two sit in the parking lot, he carries on. He wolfs down his third 7-Eleven taquito fresh off the rollers. He puts out the butt of his cigarette in the ashtray of the company truck, and he tosses his crush can of Monster Zero Ultra White right out of the window, and he lights up another Marlboro Red. He peels out of the parking lot with you in the passenger seat. He's unbuckled. You're buckled in. You like those safety meetings. So, yeah. Fallout doesn't have OSHA. After routine inspections of the warehouses and, most importantly, the vaults from several Fallout games, I've discovered that the Fallout universe simply has no workers' safety laws. We do get some safety signs in the game, but they are literally just, they're very surface level. They're very just aesthetic and form over function. And while I do appreciate these signs and I love the way they look, they're simply not up to code. There are no pallets, there's no forklifts or pallet jacks, there's virtually no personal protective equipment to be found outside of hazmat suits, and even those have a lackluster breadth of practical use to them, as obvious as you think it would be. There are barely any demarcation lines, and what do exist do not have proper application. There are barely any safely constructed ladders, and there's zero fall arrest systems. There's no lockout tagout procedures. We're dealing with nuclear fission here. Nuclear explosion could happen at any moment. No lockout tagout procedures anywhere to be found. There appear to be no thermometers for temping food. There's no pH strips to test water. Beyond aesthetics, there's no reason for any of the so-called safety features that exist in this universe. Literally everything is a live fire exercise. Mopping the floor in Fallout could either end in a sparkling floor you could eat off of, or your own mutilated corpse writhing in the radiated pee-pee water that some survivor will be drinking in 200 years. And he'll probably take a couple of your bottle caps off your corpse too, won't he? Okay, so how in the name of Grognak did this occur? There must be a reason, right? Having OSHA almost seems like a natural evolution of industrial production. Our previous generations fought hard for the modern workers' rights that we have, as little as they may seem to be to some, and to some as intrusive as they may seem. Well, the Fallout universe is weird, and when tracing the threads that make up reality, we can often find the turning point, the event or invention that causes a massive butterfly effect and changes the course of humanity. Like the offing of Franz Ferdinand causing World War I. Amazingly, here in Fallout, this butterfly effect that changed the course of their universe all came down to one invention. One invention made sure that OSHA could not occur in Fallout. And it's this little guy. The transistor. Fallout occurs in a fictionalized version of our world, a world that was very much like ours up until 1947, just after World War II, when the world was split into two, East and West. This marked the beginning of the era known as the Cold War. This also marked the beginning of an invention known as the transistor. A tiny little thing that was invented by three guys named John, Walter, and William that basically allows electrical inputs to be controlled and amplified. All modern electronics contain transistors, and it's arguably one of the most important things invented in the 20th century. Transistors revolutionized the field of electronics and allowed us to make smaller and cheaper radios, calculators, computers, and even vibrators. This little invention is precisely where our timeline that we maybe regrettably live in now, the one with TikTok and Heelys and Chris Chan, split off from Fallout's timeline, the one with robots that do your laundry and soda pop that glows. The transistor was never invented in Fallout. Instead, scientists and governments invested their efforts in massive supercomputers, as well as more advanced robotics, cybernetics, and genetic engineering. This is colloquially known in the Fallout lore as the Divergence. Now, okay, canonically, and even literally, there's more to it than just the invention of the transistor. But the lack of the transistor and the proliferation of nuclear technologies is what allowed Fallout to become Fallout. Without the transistor, we have fission-powered robots that outlive the bombs and now exist in the wastelands. We also have perfectly refrigerated pieces of cake that persisted through the blast. In fact, it also eventually led to Vault-Tec building their vaults, installing them across America, and, well, along with other planners, orchestrated the initial nuclear exchange and kicked off the Great War, ending the world as they knew it. They built a house of dynamite and they lit the fuse. But like I said, there is actually a lot more to the Divergence. It's entirely possible that the Divergence began as early as the year 1560, when Kago Toshiro was abducted by the Zetans and cryogenically frozen for centuries, until he was thawed out by the Lone Wanderer. This samurai, Kago-sama, is canonically the oldest character in the Fallout universe. So if the butterfly effect is to be believed, the Divergence started long before the non-invention of the transistor, all because of this Japanese guy getting abducted by aliens in the 1600s. This is where some grain of salting is required, right? The butterfly effect is a well-known concept and it has been used to great effect in a lot of media. There's that famous old Ray Bradbury short story. It's called The Sound of Thunder, where a scientist, he goes back in time and accidentally squashes a butterfly, and it changes the future to where, a velociraptor replaces Ashton Kutcher on that 70s show. And I think also the protagonist goes back in time, a second time, and he accidentally kisses, his brother's mom or something. I don't know. I read it a long time ago, and most of it was censored, so I don't really remember, but anyways, good grain of salting. It's really hard to say whether or not a samurai being abducted in the 1600s really had any effect on America in this capacity. It would be hard enough to prove something like this in our own world, so trying to do it in a fictional universe where you can't exactly discover hidden lore very easily and it's all made up anyways is an exercise in futility, but it's a fun exercise. And it's hard to imagine that things would be mentioned or changed in the distant past of Fallout's universe if they didn't have some kind of reasoning. It all helps prop up the Divergence theory, and guess what? We can go deeper. Because it's possible that the Divergence happened even before Kago was born. Before modern civilization began, there was an ancient civilization known as Ubar, located in the Arabian Peninsula. Its artifacts and ruins now lie beneath the Arabian desert. They were mentioned in Fallout 4 because they were discovered by an archaeologist, Lorenzo Cabot, in 1894 in Fallout's universe. He brought back a magic crown from the site, he wore it too much, and they put him in Parsons State Insane Asylum. And now, since the crown made him immortal, he's the second longest living character in the Fallout universe. So yes, while this mirrors our universe's legends of a lost civilization like Atlantis, or the City of the Pillars, or even a Taco Bell that still has the purple and teal interiors, this lost city in Fallout was actually discovered that had real-world effects on a person. Very cool. Very divergent. And there's a few little more details to Divergence that are out there and canon, but I'll actually let you discover those on your own, or maybe someone wants to put some other Divergence details down in the comments. Future me would be so happy if someone did that. So, thanks to all these divergent threads that connect us all, and the hyped up American spirit from winning World War II, and the reality of facing a new enemy in communism led to amped up industry and production that had no time for general workers' safety. It almost seems like around the time when OSHA was invented, something else wildly more sinister was enacted in the Fallout universe, and there are actual implications that laws were expanded to protect corporations over people. Thanks to the highly litigious society that Fallout's version of America has, they decided to amend and expand on the Espionage Act of 1917. Originally, the Espionage Act of 1917 and Title 50 of the United States Code was designed to give the United States government and its respective law enforcement agencies the tools needed to prevent interference and insubordination with military operations and curtail support of enemy powers on American soil. In a nutshell, it outlines prosecution involving classified documents and espionage. It was used to real effect in our real version of America in several notable cases, including the convictions of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg for conspiring to pass atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. Here in Fallout, though, we have implication that this law was expanded around 1970 to protect massive corporations like Vault-Tec, which would allow them to aggressively litigate against employees or anyone who their lawyers might deem was a threat. Imagine this scenario. You get your leg chopped off by Vault-Tec machinery and want to sue the company, but you can't because the technology that hurt you is locked behind what is functionally a federal non-disclosure agreement. All of a sudden, you can't do anything. and anyone who tries to say something is wrong would also be punished and potentially sued. They basically wrote themselves a free ticket to get away with committing corporate manslaughter at will. That's some real heavy shit. But then again, in my research of fictional laws, I quickly discovered that now there are separate laws in our version of America that seem to protect corporations just as much as this expanded Espionage Act, and maybe even more. I'm looking at you, Economics Espionage Act of 1996, and that was 30 years ago. Man, maybe we are on a slippery slope. Maybe life really does imitate art. Huh. Maybe Lockheed Martin and Raytheon really are just Vault-Tec with a different coat of paint. I hope I don't get drone doinked for saying that. Profit is all that mattered before the Great War, and the machine of industry would suffer no fools. If you were stupid enough to fall off of scaffolding or clumsy enough to slip on pee-pee in the bathroom and break your tailbone, leading to an infection that goes directly to your brain, then hopefully you got enough of your work done to not leave your manager wondering how you could possibly do this to them. You know how understaffed they are. Vault-Tec simply could not budget for yellow paint. They couldn't afford actual informative safety signs. No PPE reminders here. They do exist in-game in Fallout, like I showed you earlier, but not within a vault or anywhere useful or practical. And they're just not equivocal to real-world standards whatsoever. They couldn't afford guardrails that make sense. They couldn't afford steel-toe boots. They can't afford the time to have checks and balances or lockout, tagout procedures. Nothing is high-vis. In fact, most things are low-vis, unless it glows, like Nuka Quantum. They barely have fire extinguishers. The fire extinguishers that do exist look like they're from 1825. They look like something that a clown would spray you with at a birthday party. Safety simply can't be afforded in this universe, and basically safety was never a priority before the bombs fell. Corporate greed, political power, and rapid technological advancement beat off everything. Companies like Vault-Tec and Robco focused on speed and profit, cutting corners on safety to push out experimental technologies and products as fast as possible. And amazingly, and unsurprisingly, the American people ate it up. The entire society of Fallout's America seemed to share that mindset. They had a blind faith in the future and a lack of concern for risks. There's a lot to be said about turning a blind eye and only seeing a problem once it causes death or injury, but even in the Fallout universe, it seems like death and injury are seen as an inevitability. And I guess that's how humanity finally decided it was okay to start a thermonuclear war and destroy civilization. They had already basically done that when they decided to skimp on safety laws. Profits, baby! Alright, thanks for watching. Remember to be nice to yourself and be nice to other people. Have a great week. See ya!